Fact, super wagons are cool. We love them at Audi, we love them at AMG. So naturally, we've always wanted one from BMW M, particularly since they showed us that E46 concept that they never released. And on the 50 years celebration of BMW M, they finally gave us the car we've been waiting for, the M3 Touring. But if we take off our rose-tinted glasses for a moment and actually think about it, should we have really asked for this car? Because on paper, the M3 Touring seems to be a compromised machine. This is a car that, because purely of the body shape, has an increase of weight of about 85 kg because of all the changes done to it. It's got a slower 0 to 60, and performance cars are always chasing the nth intent, so to completely compromise an M3 saloon in this way seems to be madness. But in my experience of driving cars, what's written on paper doesn't really mean shit. You have to drive a car in reality, and that's exactly what we're doing today. It's the first drive of the M3 Touring, and together we are going to explore what this variant of the car is like versus all the other M3 and M4 variants available today, including the CSL that I recently drove, and most importantly, what it's like versus the new C63 hybrid that I also recently drove. So let's find out today, what is the super popular, brand new kid on the block M3 Touring like in reality? So guys, today's episode of RBR is sponsored kindly by Carly Connected Car App. This is an ad I've done before, and it's the one unit and device that I've had for an ad that it's been borrowed so much by my friends because it's so useful. In fact, I never got the original one back. Someone's nicked it. And the reason it's so useful is this little device plugs into your OBD port and essentially acts as a virtual workshop for you. You can plug this in and diagnose issues with your car, and the device will go through, check if any issues are live, if you have engine warning lights, other warning lights that are just there and need to be cleared and no work is required. All you need to do is plug this in, and the scanner has the ability to clear all of the fault codes. Beyond that, you can use their coding feature to unlock stuff in your car, like changing the behavior of the car, like disabling the start-stop system, and loads of other things that you can tinker within the software of your own specific car. And most of all, this device helps save money, which is why everybody was borrowing it. You don't have to go to a workshop to clear codes and waste time. All you do, plug this in, diagnose it yourself, and sort it out. It's actually quite brilliant. As an RBR viewer, of course you have a code. It's RBR23. You'll get 15% off one of these Carly dongles. You should always have one around. It's just super useful to have. So big thanks to them for sponsoring this episode. Now, back to the M3. Guys, I love wagons, okay? I love wagons so much. I own 2 wagons myself, with a third on the way. The third on the way is this beast here, the M3 Touring. The order blocks are chock full. 2 years waiting list on this thing, despite, like I said, on paper appearing to be compromised. Why is that? Why do we love wagons so much? And is the M3 Touring going to be the king of wagons? That's not something we're going to answer today. I've got a really special episode of RBR coming up, which I'm naming Wagon Wars. It's the 4 most desirable wagons in the world going up against each other, including this M3 Touring. We'll explore that later. Today, I want to see, as a BMW M car, as an M3 or M4 variant, and as a rival to C63, what is the M3 Touring really like in reality? So after that E46 concept, we have now finally got our M3 Touring. But it's come in a generation where not necessarily everyone's really happy about the M3. I mean, car journos and owners who've actually driven the M3 are ecstatic about it, except for those who then jump out the car, and some of them still not quite sure about that face. It's also come at a time where AMG have a C63 nearing 700 brake, even if it is a 4-cylinder hybrid. It's come at a time where Audi are really killing it with their Avance as well. So, if anything, it is the underdog in this situation at the moment. But as we know, as far as the M3 of this generation goes, when it comes to dynamics, it is a force to be reckoned with. And the M3 Touring brings along all of the technical brilliance from the M3 that we already know. First of all, it only comes in Competition XDrive, so you cannot get a non-competition rear-wheel drive, nor can you get the manual. It only comes in XDrive with the 8-speed. It continues that 6-cylinder twin-turbo 3D printed engine producing 510 brake horsepower. That's linked to the ZF 8-speed, we'll talk about that more as we go on the drive. And then the XDrive, that's a heavily modified version that we've seen used in the past in other 3 Series. Now in this with switchable rear wheel drive mode as well. But in the touring specifically, along with all the other bracing and rigidity that was added to the standard M3, they had to add more rigidity and bracing to the rear of the car to give it more rigidity. So we've got a different brace structure in the rear, we've got a unique rear subframe as well, obviously more glass, all of that done to make the car as dynamic as the saloon. This was their goal. One other thing that they could not do was install a carbon fiber roof big enough, because no one really makes it, at least not in the cost required for a car like this. So we've got a standard metal roof. What this has done is mess with our weight distribution a little bit. All of that together then translates into a slower car. We've got a 0 to 60 of 3.7 seconds, which is 0.3 slower than our XDrive M3 Saloon. And as I said, 85 kg more weight. How is that going to feel when we're driving it? On paper, like I said, it doesn't seem great. Allegedly, despite all of these changes made for touring, the extra glass, the weight, the extra rigidity measures, etc., it's still meant to drive exactly like this. We will see that, we'll see. I'm excited to see what happens when we go out for a drive in this. The other thing that for me is super important for Wagons is the design of the thing. And I think this looks incredible, because what they haven't done, which AMG erred in, is they haven't given it a normal 3 Series Touring's rear end. They've given it a unique wide rear end. So it's got the widened arches that we love, from the ilk of RS6, where they've actually put the effort into making their performance car stand out from their standard car. And just that element looks amazing. It frames the rear exhaust so well. It sits so nicely with the lights. You've even got an opening within our hatchback through the glass, which is such a BMW thing to do. Very, very useful in reality. But the whole thing just looks amazing. To me, when I compare this to Saloon, when I compare it to M4, even to CSL, the Wagon is the one that it almost seems like this generation was designed for. To me, I personally like the front end, and I've said that being from outside the brand, coming from an AMG purchase past, I really quite like the front end because it gives that real aggression, particularly when you see it coming from behind. It looks really good. But the Wagon, I think, suits that whole look the most. I do wonder, do you think they'll do an M3 Touring CS? As the CS has just come out. That'd be really interesting. More power. Obviously XDrive still, you know, stripped out interior, etc., etc. That could be special. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Now, one thing I want to talk to you about is Tourings with BMW M. This might not be the end of it. Is that where we had no M5 Touring recently, we had a couple in the past with terrible sales figures, but now a huge cult following. Allegedly, the M5 hybrid that's coming will have a Touring. Alleged. This is the rumors that we're hearing. How cool would that be? You know, things not left easy for AMG and Audi now going in the future. If anything, BMW M could be the prime makers of fast estate wagon Tourings going in the future. How's that for a thought? Now, let's jump in. Let's take a look at the interior, which has always been impressive. A very quick look, because we've seen it in the past as well. And then head out and do a first drive in this and see what is the M3 Touring like in reality. Oh, the interior. The interior is so beautiful in this car. While I don't like digital driver zones, generally I like analog things like watches. I've said this in the past. What's really cool is how they've upgraded this, and I want to talk you through that, because it's got so much MDNA in it now. It just makes me smile. But the general things about the M3 interior, like the amazing carbon bucket seats, which I know difficult to get into because of these in particular, and then to get out of as well. And then you've got your famous carbon willy holders, but they look so great as you're coming in. They look so great as you're coming into the rear of the car as well, because of the carbon backing, and they really keep you in place, because at a moment's notice you can turn this car from a family wagon into a proper sports car, and in that scenario you want to be sat in place, and the standard seats aren't up to it as much as these buckets are. That's simply a fact, and I love them. I love the way they look, particularly when you have a two-tone interior going on like this car. Looks amazing. Carbon fiber everywhere, again looking great. Loads of space in the rear. It's a really roomy rear bench actually. Kind of surprises you. It seems more like class above in terms of leg space. The one downside is the metal roof. You don't get a pan roof. It's a bit darker for your occupants in the back, which of course the rivals haven't got an issue with. So that's the one downside. But now I want to take you through The great changes they made here with the bigger screen, because they've done some real work on the digital screens here, and they are so much better. So at the moment, if I zoom in, we have got your standard screen here, which is the road screen. But if we go here and we press M mode, actually we have to start the car first. We press M mode, go into sport, and you can see you get this fantastic retro style screen, which is so BMW M. And the cool thing about this screen, if we zoom in, for example, just look at the attention to detail when it comes to font. Those fonts you see there, all of them, particularly the numbers, they're just like your badges. They are proper BMW M fonts. That's the font that you see in the M2, M3, M8, etc. What I mean when you have manufacturers paying attention to small details. Like for example here with our tyre temperatures and pressures, that's not an M3 Touring, that's the M1. How cool is that? And then all the shapes within here, etc., all BMW M style. I think that's fantastic, and they've really gone to town on that in this generation. Similarly, even our infotainment system here, the colors, the graphics, the shapes and everything, exactly, you know, as you would expect of a BMW M car. And I don't like it, for example, in Porsche, where the system, you wouldn't even know it's a Porsche, it could be any VW group car. You jump in this car without knowing what it is, the system and the way that's designed leaves you in no doubt that it is a BMW M. So that's fantastic. This system can be quite laggy sometimes, and it's a new system, we'll forgive it. But you know, in terms of visibility, in terms of touch points, etc., it's been pretty good. So a good basis to make this even better in the future. Then over here, you've got your trusty gear selector, which is nothing like the silly small knob we've got in the LCI 3 Series. Hopefully this remains in our facelift as well, with your M mode button, your setup button, which if we press that, you get your entire setup menu here for how you want to drive the car. Very easy to use. And then you can set up your M1 and M2 buttons on the steering wheel here. Steering wheel is okay. You guys know I'm not a fan of it. This is still nice with the carbon shift paddles, etc., but it's a bit too standard BMW for me. That being said, when you drive the car, you kind of forget about all this because it's such a cracking drive. And the rest of the interior is so theatrical, as I've already shown you. You know, it all kind of makes up for it. In terms of sound, here's what it sounds like when you turn it on. Let's do that again. So not bad, no rev limiter, you know, an interesting enough sound, certainly better than C63 hybrid. That's not bad at all. Now, this is what it's all about. Let's head out. Let's see what this car can do on the road. First 100 yards of the M3 Touring, even in the most basic drive settings here, everything in comfort, you're immediately taken by this car. You're feeling the grit of the road, the nuances of the steering. I can feel absolutely everything here. And it feels just like M3. You feel like you're sitting in a proper sports car. And the way that it's married to the road and the connection that the four wheels have and the steering and everything just reminds me of like M4 CSL or M5 CS, and that's a brilliant start. Now as I pop this into M1 now, I'm going to put everything into sport, and that fact is true of M3 as well, that it feels like a proper sports car. The steering is beautiful, the poise on the road tells you that this is a proper sports car that you can genuinely use around track, and beyond that, really enjoy yourself daily on some nice B roads. The thing I love immediately is the directness of the steering. Of course, the power response of this engine that we already know is fantastic, and the light-footedness, because you add that weight, you got the XDrive as well. You know, the Touring adding 85 kg, immediately you're assuming this is going to be a fat wagon. It is not. It is nimble, it is light-footed. I love the way this car can chew up corners like they're absolutely nothing. It is an absolute athlete. I shot this car back-to-back with my own 911 GTS, which is, you know, pretty much one of the best sports cars in the world, and I was not left longing when I came back into the M3 Touring. That is how good this car is. But look, you're right, I have a job to do. I have to quantify this in a better way, in a more specific way. So let us start with speed. And to do that, we are first, of course, going to start with a launch control. We have to get MX drive here, four-wheel drive sport, manual mode, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, we're ready now. Let's do this. Let's see what it can do. Crazy. Look at that time, 3.55 seconds. Now, Now bear in mind, that is only a 0.1 second difference to our saloon, which is a whole 85 kg lighter. So it's negligible, and if that is your measuring stick for this, is it going to be slower than all the others? It's not in any definable way. But it's not just launch control speed, it's daily speed as well. I mean, how often are we going to be launch controlling everywhere? It's just the speed you get from point A to point B, the responsiveness of the engine, and the sheer speed on off-road. It's that perfect amount of horsepower that you want. 510 brake horsepower, this size of car, 600 plus Newton meters, 3.5 seconds, 0-60. This is usable power in a daily car. We're not going to stupid levels that we're never going to enjoy in reality. I'm talking to you, C63, with your 670 brake. This power you're going to access all day, every day, and you're going to love it. Now, while the speed is impressive and the power is just that right amount, the M3 is not all about speed and power only, is it? It's about handling and dynamics. And that is where BMW M have genuinely pulled the rabbit out of the hat. You have to keep checking back and am I in a saloon? Am I in an M4? What is this? It's not different at all. What do I mean by that? Let's qualify this. What we're talking about, first of all, is steering response. Steering, lovely, nice and communicative, unlike XDrives from BMW M in the past, which end up having this horrible numbness in the middle. It's not quite perfect, it's not quite as good as the rear-wheel drive M3, but it's pretty good. But it is most certainly the best out of the XDrive BMWs, and it does not deter you from driving faster. It gives you confidence. That's always what I'm looking at when it comes to steering, getting confidence from the car. The directional changes that you can make at speed, the same roads that I tackled the M5 CS on, and very, very similar to that. This is normally the part where I say to you, yes, the XDrive is great, etc., but my choice would be the rear-wheel drive version. As I say, in most sports cars, this is the exception, I think. I think there's barely any difference. And I think the benefits that you derive from having the XDrive system in terms of speed and all year-round usability far outweigh any tiny, tiny differences that you might find. But it doesn't feel this way, it doesn't feel like a touring. They've really done the perfect job on this. Now let's get on to some other bits. I'm a big fan of this engine. I just wish I could have seen it paired to the dual clutch that we had previously. This 8-speed is good. It's one of the better torque converters I've used, but sometimes you get this little lag and then you realize it's a torque converter trying to be a dual clutch. Most of the time, you kind of leave it to its own devices and it's good enough, but that sounds like I'm reviewing an AMG from the early 2000s. At the expense of a bit of comfort, I've been tempted for BMW M to push out the gearbox software from the M4 CSL everywhere, because it would just help the situation. Sound, we know, it's so-so, but at least it's the right engine. You get a few little pops and a few things. It sounds angry. We know that it's a 6-cylinder like it should be. Unlike C63, how is that car struggling in terms of identity? We can hear a 6-cylinder here. It feels right. And we know we've seen so many exhaust companies bring out better sound out of this car as well. So there's hope. What it absolutely isn't is some kind of deterrent to driving this car. To me, it's enough. It sounds as good as a modern 911 does versus old 911s. It's that ilk of being quieter but the right type of tune. And then when you're having so much fun in the handling, it's just a nice complement to it, which is what you expect in this day and age. So it is everything that you want the M3 to be. What is it like versus the C63S e-Performance wagon? Well, that was a heavy, heavy car. Dynamically, very, very good actually, because of, well, the magic that AMG managed to do. The weight isn't like beyond something like an E63 or an RS6, so it's manageable, right? Plus you have a bit less weight on the front, and you had rear wheel steer, which helps so much as well, but still not nimble. It felt like a car from the class above because of its weight. And then you bring into the fact that you don't have that emotional connection to the car that you have with this one. It's not the right engine. It doesn't feel the same like the old C63s. It felt like a totally different product, which is why I said it needs a different name. Compared to this feels like home. It feels like an M3. And for my money, it's the better vehicle. Yes, it has less horsepower. Yes, it has less speed. I don't care on either things because I find this is enough. Versus the rest of the M3s and the M4s in the lineup, it feels exactly the same as those. I would love to see an M3 Touring CS. Considering that the CS is already XDrive based, with more rigidity measures, etc., they'd be mad not to do it, I feel, because this car is just gagging for a bit more rigidity, slightly snappier gearbox, a bit more power. it'd be quite interesting to see that in an M3 CS, so I really hope that happens in the future. This is one of those very rare occasions when, often when customers ask for certain products, they don't actually know what they want, and the products they ask for probably wouldn't actually sell that well. But this is that rare occasion when the M3 Touring has been asked for so long, and the customers were absolutely right, and the performance houses themselves were able to deliver on a car that's basically uncompromised versus its siblings. And with a waitlist amounting to a few years, it absolutely deserves to be in the position that it is. And me, even though I own 2 performance wagons already, I think I'm gonna have one of these. That's how good it is, and that's how uniquely it does what it does. So there's probably no better way to end the video than that. See you guys next time.